Good evening, everybody. I hope that you've had a good day. This is hashtag Gather to Grow with me, your host, Dawn Numdu. I trust that everything's been good in your agricultural journey. As you know, this is something that we've been doing, I think, for the past almost 2 years now. These live sessions to specifically share information around specific commodities, share information for farmers to grow in the industry, and for us to come together and really share information that is vital for your growth. So I'm really excited to be back. I'm really excited about the topic this evening, vermiculture or vermicomposting. I actually have to figure out what the correct terminology is from our guest joining us this evening. But I'm really excited about it because I know that some people have been asking me about it, wanting to know more information about how to get started. I myself am interested just for my own learning and growing as a developing person or farmer within the agricultural space as well. So I'm really keen to get insights from them. So just to go over the topic for tonight. So it's Vermiculture 101. So we're basically just going to share a bit of a beginner's guide. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So this is my first guest. Sinentra she runs a vermicomposting business. And I'm so happy to have you join us. I've been following you for a short while, and I must say, I love what you do. I love that you're really spreading, knowledge on the specific area of agriculture, which I think is very important. Happy nutrient soil is important for any, crop farmer, anyone in that side of agriculture. So maybe you can just, as a start, while I try to get our other guests to join us, tell us a little bit about you, where it started for you, and then also just to, as an introduction to the topic, talk about, the importance of composting and vermicomposting as a start. Thanks.
I'm a bit nervous, hey? I'm a bit nervous. I don't usually do live videos, but I'm happy to be here, man. Yeah, man, I'm Nhlanhla Maduna from Pietermaritzburg, co-founded S&P on organic products last year, July. So it's been a year now. I love vermiculture, so that's where my focus is, vermicomposting.
No need to be nervous. I always tell my guests, like, even if you don't know the answer to something, luckily we have 3 speakers on the session. And even if you say, hey, I don't know that answer, I'll get back to you at a later stage. Yeah. This is a very open, free space. I think our other guest is also here, although I don't see, do you see another person in the session?
I can see Goppus.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome. I can't see you. I think there's some technicalities. If you don't turn your camera on as a start, I won't be able to see you on my side. But if everyone else can see you, Jacobus is from Tukwevlei Boerdery. Also very happy vermiculturalist. I missed visiting your farm, but if you can tell us more about what you do in terms of vermiculture and vermicomposting as a start. Thank you, Jacobus.
I'm a commercial wheat farmer in the Boland, in the Swartland district, so in the Western Cape. I do the vermicomposting specifically for the worm pea. I use it during planting and also during different stages of my wheat production.
Thank you so much. Of course, I'm happy to have you join us. But Sine refers to itself as a worm mom, so I'm going to call you a worm dad. But thank you so much for joining me. And I was just briefly doing a bit of introduction to the topic. But maybe you can also just start with, what is vermiculture and how does it differ from traditional composting methods? Let's go back to Sine, and then if you want to comment as well, of course. Thanks.
Most people say vermiculture or vermicomposting. But for me, I focus more on composting. So once you involve the term vermi, that means you're involving worms. So we use worms to break down organic waste food for worms to improve the soil health. So that's what we do. Also, how it's differ, it's because the vermicomposting is much faster than the traditional way. Also, vermiculture. so nervous.
It's okay. If you want to take
Also, vermiculture is used for fish baiting and other things, animal feed, soil. Also, the difference is because traditional ways take time. They could take up to a year compared to worm composting. Worm composting could take like a month, you know. So it's quite quicker.
Thanks, Sine. Really no need to be nervous. You're just talking to Kos and I. Just ignore everyone else on the... Kos, just in terms of, what got you started, you said you referred to the worm juice, which I think is, I guess, the residue that comes from the worm bins. We can get into the technical terms now, because we just talk about how you got started and kind of why it's important for any farmer to kind of understand the concept and start using it to incorporate it into their farming practice.
My father-in-law actually started with an Australian red wriggler worm, started in 2 buckets at home, and he started using it on his vegetable garden, and he just saw very good results from just using it on his vegetables, and we slowly started multiplying the worms in bigger and bigger bins, so much so that I think I have about between 10 and 12 tons of worm compost bins at the moment. I can make about 2.5 to 3,000 liters of worm pee or worm extract a day. So I saw a lot of. We did some Afrikaans, English. We did some research on some of my acres on the farm. Did tests and stuff, and saw that the worm pee had a very good effect on growth and the soil analogy and stuff. You started using it commercially about 3 years ago. So saw a lot of good results, especially in the drier times, when the wheat is suffering from drought. It helps a lot. And also now we have had about 300 mils of rain in July. So the plants are under a lot of stress. They can't take up the nutrients like they're supposed to, because their feet are wet, like we say. But my wheat has survived too much water in the wheat fields.
I'm in the Boland area, so I'm well aware of the amount of rainfall we've had over the past few weeks. So very important point that you're sharing there. And I'm very interested to know, before I get to my next question, so you're basically using this method on a commercial scale for your commercial production, right?
Yes, I halved my plant fertilizer. I only planted with 15 units of nitrogen, where I usually plant with between 24 and 27 units. I actually halved my fertilizer, my planting fertilizer. I halved my bill and the amount I used. Where my neighbors, I talked to 2 of my neighbors. They're on 130 units of nitrogen, and I'm only on 94. And you can't see the difference between my wheat and theirs.
That's amazing. So there's definitely benefits in cutting input costs on your side as a wheat farmer. Sine, I think it's amazing. So your business is about a year old, just over a year. And so maybe you can just talk about, what you did to set up, like what materials are needed when you kind of first get your worm bin for vermiculture going. And then also you can also just talk about the best types of worms that are suited for vermiculture.
So for me, I decided to go for tires. Most people use containers or whatever, but I use tires. I feel like It's affordable because you get them for free. You don't buy anything. So most of the things I use, I recycle. I don't buy anything. That's what I love about vermicomposting, because even with the food, you don't buy anything basically. You go and ask from different restaurants to give you coffee grounds, give you eggshells, and you bring it home and you use it. You just cut grass from your home and you use that. So for me, I use old car tires. I go and ask them around. I also, for bedding, I use cardboard, newspaper, shredded paper, also aged manure. Could be cow, could be rabbits, could be horse, could be chicken droppings. They're actually good. So I use those kind of stuff. But for me, I use for selling. I don't use for my garden. I use for selling. Also, you must have plastics to cover your tires, because they're also like birds. They're around, so you need to protect your tires, make sure that they're covered and your worms are safe. So yeah, and you need worms, of course. So I use red worms. They're known as Azenia fetida. I hope I'm saying it in the correct way. But yeah, and I put like 1 kg of worms in each tire. So that's how I do my measurements. And they grow rapidly. They reproduce every now and then. I started with 15 tires. Yeah, now I think we have about 40 something tires.
Your business is set up to sell the worms themselves, so you don't do the worm juice or pee as Koos was referring to. So you sell the actual worms as part of your business.
No, I sell compost.
So you sell the compost?
Yes, I sell the compost and the worms for fish baiting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that introduction, at least to how you got started. And I love that you're so sustainable and that you're using all of these, recycled materials and resources that are maybe a little bit more easily available. I think building those networks to start, and I always say to people, start with very little and then you can always build up from that point. Someone is just asking, Matipa is there measurements for any of these? So I think Matipa is referring to the measurements to get started. So I'm not sure if you can just add more detail to that question. And then another question is, does it matter what kind of food you feed them as the quality of the compost? Of course, maybe you can take that one.
The only thing about taking your food scraps and stuff from home, I use my wheat bales, my old wheat straw and stuff to do mine. But I learned from my father-in-law that they don't like acidic stuff, and also no meat products and no dairy products, because it turns the soil acidic, and they don't like the acidity, especially onions also, and also like oranges and citrus and lemons, limes, stuff like that. They don't like that. Cardboard, newspaper, anything that's biodegradable. Egg boxes, they love an egg box. My bins that do the best, they love maize meal, yellow maize meal. I take a 20-liter bucket, put in about 2 kgs of maize meal, fill the bucket with water, and I put that inside my bins, and it's like a turbo boost for the worms. They start mating almost immediately. They really grow their population very quickly when you give them a bit of maize meal.
Yes, you must make sure everything is organic, because they're very sensitive. Yeah, they die quickly. So everything you feed them must be organic and recyclable.
Yeah, even your grass cuttings. I saw that your grass cuttings, you have to make sure that your grass cuttings isn't put in the same day. Leave the grass cuttings for like 2 or 3 days so it can start fermenting, because that fermenting process also generates heat, and they don't like too much heat in their growth bins.
So Matiba also saying there's a lot of food wastage from fresh produce from farmers to cooked food in restaurants. So I think a part of it was answered in terms of not putting meat products or dairy products and the acidic products like onions and oranges and lemons into your bins. And then there was also just a comment from Matiba again saying, is the outcome of the compost measured, and what nutrients does it have? So is that the question I think that he's asking? Of course, so any comments on that one?
In about 5 kgs of the worm castings, there's about 2% nitrogen, There's 1% phosphorus, potassium, 1%, 0.5% of calcium, about 2% magnesium. Then there's also iron, manganese, and zinc in the worm castings. The iron is about 175 parts per million. Manganese is about 100 parts per million, and the zinc is about 25 parts per million. All those are micro elements that a plant needs.
That you must avoid having sodium on your worm compost. It's not good, especially if you want to sell. Your sodium mustn't be high. Actually, you mustn't have it mustn't be a lot.
And then the testing, just please forgive my ignorance, but the testing to understand the balance of these nutrients in the compost itself, how does that get done? Do you test it yourself as producers, or where does one test for that? Just out of interest's sake.
Mine got tested at a lab in Cape Town, just outside Cape Town. There's a lab that did my testing for me. I use the pea, and these nutrients and stuff is concentrated more inside the pea, so much so that I use a 1:5 or a 1:3 concentration of the worm pea. And I also turn the pea into worm tea. There's a very big difference between the pea and the tea. I add a sugar component like molasses or sugar, my worm pea, for 24 hours. That activates the good bacteria and the fungi, the mycorrhiza, the rhizobius, and the stuff inside the worm pea. It increases exponentially if you feed those good bacteria with the sugars and you aerate that stuff. The only problem is you have 6 to 8 hours to use that tea, or all those good bacteria and fungicides die off again because there's no food for them. If you put that in the soil, they generate their own food, sugars and stuff from the microbes and stuff inside the soil.
Of course, anything to add on that, Sine?
I use the Dara. It's here in Hilton. So yes, I use the Dara to check the nutrients.
Perfect. Now, let's talk about ideal conditions, temperature, moisture, pH for maintaining a thriving worm colony. Maybe you can talk about your practicing and then I'll go over to course. Thanks.
I don't have a temperature that I use myself, but I can tell because now I'm used to it. So now I'm used to it. But you must make sure that the bedding is moisture. It shouldn't be too damp. It shouldn't be too much water, but it should be damp. There must be oxygen. So you must always mix your bedding to make sure that the worms are okay. And also you mustn't have things that have acid, like oranges, stuff like that, tomatoes. So try to avoid those type of things on your worm bin. Also, the smell. You can even hear the smell. It shouldn't smell bad. It must be earthy-like for you to know that everything is healthy in your worm bin. It must be dark. They don't like lights, by the way. It must be dark, and make sure that you check them regularly because they're very sensitive.
Thanks so much. Koos, from your side?
I use my HT8 spool strips, those you buy in a bottle. You get those small spool strips that test the chlorine and the pH of your pool. I test about once a month. They don't like acidic, so they go at a pH about between 5 and 8. And temperatures, here in the Boland, we get temperatures in summer from 30 upwards to, we had a day in February that was 52 degrees. And all I can do then is I put my misters and stuff on my compost heaps and my worm bins, just to keep them moist and keep their temperature down.
Thanks so much for that, Koos. Matipa was just saying, sorry to go back, but are the nutrients always consistent, or is it based on what you feed the worms?
It's based on what you feed the worms. Obviously, they won't be consistent. So you must have measurements on how you put your feeding on container or your tire. Depends. But you must always check. You must always go to the lab and check if everything is still okay.
I agree with. If you want to increase your carbon load, especially we farmers that burn our fields for peeling off weeds and stuff, I like to add some wood chips into my composting heaps to increase the carbon load in the bins.
Thanks. I think this question is more towards you, Koos, seeing that you're also doing wheat. Lakshman Pranesh, does the vermicompost and its tea affect wheat seed germination?
I also treat my wheat seed with the worm tea because it helps with germination. Because you give the wheat a better start from the beginning. You give them that localized microbes and micro elements to start germinating quicker and better.
Thanks so much, Koos. And then your favorite farmer asking, hi, Dawn, I joined the live late, so this question might have been answered. She's asking if we're intentional as a country about recycling our waste. Do you think worm tea can replace synthetic fertilizers in the future? Good question. What do you guys think, Sine? Do you think it could?
Yeah, it could, because fertilizers make us sick. So let's go back to organic, and yeah, definitely.
And then someone saying, Umkos, what do you think about synthetic worm tea and your methods of fertilizing, replacing synthetic fertilizers in the future?
It's going to take a while to get people to change their mindsets. I've already started talking to the farmers around me and giving them some to test on their own stuff. On a commercial level, it's going to take a while, and it's going to take the farmer to change the mindset. That's going to be a big step. But I don't think we'll ever, in our country, I don't think we'll ever not have synthetic fertilizers, because it's such a big industry and a job creation industry as well. A country like us with job poor, I don't think it'll change very quickly.
Just in terms of your practice, and you've been doing this for how long, of course? In terms of your commercial farming practice?
Commercial farming, 3 years. But I still use synthetic fertilizers as well. So not fully organic yet, but we're working towards it. We're taking small steps, baby steps. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, you're right. I hope that answers your question, your favorite farmer. This is actually a group of South African farmers traveling in Brazil. So yeah, happy to have you join us. Matipa's asking, how does one separate worm tea, even selling the compost after? How are the worms removed effectively? I think that's a question for both of you. Let's start with Sine. Thanks, Sine.
I don't do worm tea. So for me, since I use tires, I can tell when they're done eating. They will be up and the tire, they will be wanting new food. So I will add another tire on top of the other food, and then they will just migrate to the food that has food. Then the tire that's underneath will be left with no worms. Then I'll just take it out. So I won't be collecting worms one by one. I just add another tire and put food, and they'll just migrate to go up, and I'll take that tire up. And obviously I must pack it nicely for you guys.
The separation of the worm tea?
We started small. We started with 20-liter buckets, 3 of them. You drill holes in the bottom of 2 of them. Then the bottom one is a solid bucket that has nothing in it. The middle bucket, you put the worms and all your food scraps and stuff. In the top bucket, you put some wet newspaper. You start putting your new food scraps and stuff into that bucket. Once the worms finish the middle bucket, food scraps and stuff, they will travel upwards to the first bucket, and the drainage holes in the middle bucket and the top bucket will drain that worm pee into the bottom bucket, and you can collect it that way.
I've actually seen a very interesting method at my son's school. They also do it, and I want to try and with mine. Is they do with the bathtubs, and then they literally where the output is for where the water should run out, they connect that underground. So they put it on top, and then underground is where the pipes come, and they run that off. So I don't know if that also works, but that works beautifully. So they have like 2 bathtubs on top of each other, bottom with the worms, and then the cover. And then out of the outlet for the water, that's where the juice runs off, which I thought was also a great one.
I use 1,000-liter flow bins. I cut off the top third of the flow bin, turn it around, and it acts as a container for the worms. And I drill a bunch of holes and I put shade netting inside the top one, and the worm pee just drips through as the worms consume the materials. So the worm pee just drips through to the bottom one, and that the flow bins already have taps attached to the flow bin. And those taps I connected to 4 large JoJo tanks and pump it into that and use that as my worm pee.
And then obviously, of course, that doesn't go off, right? Does the worm pee expire? I don't even know if that's something that will happen. No?
Yep.
Yes?
My worm pee, I've kept some of it for a year and it hasn't gone off. The only problem is if you turn that worm pee into worm tea, you only have a window of about 6 to 8 hours to use that worm tea, because then the organisms and stuff inside dies off, and that gives off a pretty bad smell.
Yeah, just that actually brings me to my next question. How can you tell if your worm bin is healthy and the worms are thriving, Sine?
So they must be active. So they must reproduce. You can tell when they're active. They must reproduce, they must mate. And even the color, they must be reddish, brownish. You can tell that they're healthy. The smell, I did say the smell. It must be earthy. Also, even with the manure, it must just be dark, it must be dark and have moisture as well. There must be few pests on your bedding, depending on what you're using, but there must be few pests. And also there must be, this term we say cocoons. There must be cocoons on your worm bin as well. They shouldn't try to escape. If they try to escape, that means there's no food left, or maybe there's something they don't like.
Of course, would you like to add something?
I concur with the smell of the worm castings is like that smell you get when you turn over soil after it rained. It has that lovely earthy smell. It doesn't smell of anything. It smells of earth. You can't describe it. It's such a natural, and it's a good smell. I love that smell.
I can tell. So I think I'm nearing the end of tonight's discussion. I'm happy that it was so interactive this evening. I think the topic is so important. I think it really speaks to us moving towards more sustainable practice in terms of agriculture and throughout all commodities. So I think this one is a really good conversation to have. Let's talk about the benefits. I think we've gone over a lot of these things already. Koos mentioned how it's, saved him input costs in terms of his agricultural production. But if you can just talk generally about the benefits of vermicompost and how farmers can start incorporating it on a small scale and then just trying, because I don't think, does it take a lot of effort to manage? Senior, as someone who runs a business for it, you're obviously doing it full time, but if I'm a farmer and I have another commodity and I just want to incorporate this on a small scale and then maybe scale up to a point where I'm actually incorporating it into my business practice overall, how does that work? Thanks. I think I'm going to start with you, Koos.
Once it starts, you start doing it, it takes care of itself. Check on it once or twice a week, just making sure the moisture content is fine in the bins. They have enough food. And also, I did a lot of tests with my worm, with the worm tea, and found I believe that if you have a healthy plant, it keeps away the pests, and we had a very, very bad outbreak of fungi. We call it a fungicide. A fungi called we call it poeierachtige meeldow. And my plants of my wheat last year, I only did one spray of the tea, and I had very good results. So I used it as a fungicide, a natural fungicide, and it also keeps away. I don't know why the aphids and stuff that sucks on the leaves and the roots of the plants. So I won't put my head on it. I haven't done the enough studying, so we learn each day. But I saw very good results with the tea.
Well, this is you with your own data capturing and monitoring over a specific period of time.
Yeah.
So that showcases at least your experience with it.
Yeah.
And everyone's method would be different. So, I mean, that in itself is enough for me to get started and try it even on a backyard gardening scale. Thanks so much for that insight, course. And then just from your side, as someone who's running a business, what would you say to advise people on how to get started? How do they even connect with you, Sine? Reach out to you for more information on this.
I think Opus did say once you start, it runs itself. Unfortunately, you can't say, I will check maybe next week. No, no, no. With me, I check every day because I produce compost, right? Sometimes they'll be done food in no time. So I need to add feeding all the time and busy collecting from different restaurants and coffee shops, eggshells and coffee grounds. So for me, it's like a daily thing. It's easy because you're just using waste and promoting sustainable living. And how you can reach me here on my page. I do have Instagram. I do have Facebook as well. And the compost, it's great for leaf development and root development as well, flowering, all of those type of things.
I think I've gotten a lot of information out of both of you this evening. Okay, maybe last question, just in terms of spacing, how much space would you realistically need? Senior's method is to use tires. She said she started with like a handful and now it's up to 40. Do you stack them? How much space do you realistically need? And then obviously, of course, I think you said you use bins and other methods and also tanks for the worm juice, worm peel. So maybe we can just talk about that.
You don't necessarily need a lot of space unless now your business is really growing. Some can even do it indoors. But for me, I stack my tires. Normally I do two tires. Two tires stacked. So yeah, man, it doesn't take a lot of space. I can't say the measurements exactly, but it doesn't take a lot of space if you're using tire method.
Besides using the recyclable material, there are people that sell these bins, right? That has the taps. What are the cost of those if you choose that method?
We also started small. We started with a few 20-liter buckets. And it increased so much that I use about area about 100 by 100 meters, say 1 hectare of space, because I need to be able to get my tractors and planters and stuff to the containers and stuff to feed the worms and all that. Because it's a commercial space, it's a lot bigger. But like I said, father-in-law started with a handful of worms and 2 buckets. He taught me. He still comes to the farm and he still helps me with all the small stuff, like do this, do that. And it's all from experience. He's been doing it for 11 years. He taught me and I use all his knowledge he gathered over the years.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And I think this knowledge sharing is so important. I'm really happy to you, our experts, for joining us this evening. But if you'd like to connect with either one of them, reach out to them on Instagram, speak to Cecina about her business practice, chat to Koos about his experience and learnings. I think that's the whole point of this. We come here and we learn a bit of, something that we might not know about, and we expand our knowledge. So thank you so much to our expert. Any last comments from either one of you before we wrap? Cecina, from you?
Thank you for having me. It's all about promoting sustainable living and reducing waste for me. And it's so amazing that they're so small, but they do such an amazing work. It's incredible. So I love being a worm mom, and I shall continue being a worm mom. Thank you.
Don't start big, start small. See if you like what you're doing and use what you have. We started small, started with 2 buckets and have gone into the commercial side of it for myself and my farm. Just start small. Don't go too big too soon.
Matipa wants to keep us here for a little bit longer. Matipa's asking last question. How profitable is the market, and is it more of a niche market? Sine, maybe you can start as a new business owner, and then Koos can talk about how he's kind of developed over time.
For me, getting into the market was quite difficult. It's still difficult, but we're getting there. There is a need for organic fertilizers. So there is profits. It just depends on how you're advertising yourself.
Thanks, Sine. And for you, Koos, have you So, and the profit on this, besides the added benefits to your general practice, and would you consider a niche market?
I don't sell my stuff. I use it for myself. I have given to some of the farmers next to me. My neighboring farmer has used it on his alfalfa with a lot of success. So I'm starting with one of the other farmers here who has a Protea farm, because you can't use normal synthetic fertilizers on natural flowers like Proteas and the fynbos. So we're going to try and do a test on that and see if it works on the fynbos.
I am so happy about this kind of connections and collaboration, because I also know a Protea farmer. Of course, I'll definitely be in touch to see how we can even test it for that farmer. He's also in the Western Cape region. Thank you so much to everyone who engaged. Many people commenting saying thank you. Thanks everyone still learning too. Thanks from Lashman Pranithan. Thanks to all. I do appreciate the engagement this evening. To my guests, thank you so much. Of course, thank you so much, Asine. All the best with both your businesses. And I'll be sure to get some worms very soon and get started myself. So thank you so much for your insights. Everything of the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Very much.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.